So, Libra. A sign shrouded in a veil of mystery, sometimes causing perplexity. Why is it so? Why these seemingly most diplomatic representatives of the zodiac are sometimes so difficult to understand. In this video we will try to open the veil of mystery and look at Libra from a new angle. Let's not jump to conclusions and label them. On the contrary, we are waiting for a fascinating journey, in which we will consider as many as 16 interesting aspects that form this air sign. This is not an instruction manual, but rather an invitation for reflection. Remember, Libra is under the auspices of Venus and belongs to the element of air, which already hints at its desire for beauty and harmony, as well as for lightness and sociability. But what lies behind this external attractiveness? Let's try to understand. And, by the way, how does their famous desire for balance manifest itself in real life? So, we already know that Libra is an airy sign, led by Venus, striving for beauty and harmony. But how does this craving for balance manifest itself in their lives? And why, sometimes, it raises so many questions from others? Let's dig deeper. The desire for harmony is perhaps the cornerstone of Libra's nature. They sincerely believe that the world should be beautiful, relationships, fair, and decisions, balanced. And there is certainly a beauty in that. But, let's be honest, sometimes this aspiration can be perceived as naive idealism, as an attempt to escape from the harsh reality, where conflicts are inevitable. Libra often try to avoid sharp corners, to smooth out contradictions, to find compromises. And this is great when it comes to maintaining peace in the family or work team. But sometimes, carried away by the pursuit of harmony, they can overlook important details, gloss over problems that require an immediate solution. Take, for example, the situation at work. Libra, striving to maintain good relations with all colleagues, may hesitate for a long time before expressing their opinion, even if it is fundamentally important to the project. Or, in personal relationships, they may avoid confrontation for fear of upsetting the delicate balance, even if it means suppressing their own feelings. It is important to realize that balance is not always the absence of conflicts. It is rather the ability to resolve them, to find common ground, to come to a mutually beneficial solution. Libra should remember that sometimes, in order to build a strong bridge, you must first recognize that there is a gap between the shores. And here is an interesting question, and whether the desire to compromise Libra always dictated by a sincere desire for peace? Or is there something else behind it? So, let's talk about the diplomacy of Libra. This quality is certainly their calling card, something that catches the eye when communicating. Libra, as true children of Venus, seek peace and harmony. They are born negotiators, able to smooth out sharp edges and find compromises. But herein lies the rub. Their ability to find the golden mean, smooth out the contradictions, sometimes perceived by others as insincerity, as an attempt to please everyone at once. The question arises, how sincere are Libra in their desire to compromise? Let's look deeper into the motives that drive Libra in their diplomatic behavior. This is, first of all, the desire to avoid conflicts, to preserve harmony in relationships. They sincerely believe that peace is better than war, and are willing to make concessions to achieve this goal. However, sometimes, in the pursuit of universal approval, Libra can cross the thin line separating diplomacy from hypocrisy. Where is this line? And how can Libra not cross it? The answer is simple: insincerity. It is important that the desire to compromise is not turned into a silence of their own feelings and beliefs. Sincerity is the foundation of strong and healthy relationships. If Libra will be honest with themselves and with others, their diplomacy will be perceived as a valuable quality, not as a manifestation of duplicity. But, as you know, any decision requires time and deliberation. But how this process happens in Libra is a different story. So, we continue our journey deep into the mysterious soul of Libra. And today let's talk about their famous, weightiness. Yes, that's right, with a touch of irony. Because sometimes this weighing, this desire to take into account all the pros and cons, turns into real indecision. Why do Libras take so long to make decisions? The fact is that for them is extremely important fairness and objectivity. They try to take into account all the factors, all the nuances, so as not to offend anyone and not to make a mistake. They are afraid that the decision made will turn out to be wrong, unfair, and this may cause pain to others. On the one hand, this is a wonderful quality, the desire for harmony and consideration of the interests of others. On the other hand, life does not always give time for a long reflection. And then Libra falls into the trap of endless analysis, missing opportunities. How to help Libra make decisions faster? First of all, remind them that there is no perfect solution. There will always be some losses, some compromises. It is important to learn to trust your intuition and not be afraid to take responsibility. And, of course, do not forget about the value of well-considered decisions. After all, it is thanks to their deliberateness that Libra often make the wisest and fairest decisions that benefit everyone. But here's another interesting point that often escapes attention: how do Libras feel about beauty? And why does their love of aesthetics sometimes seem superficial to those around them? So, let's continue our fascinating journey into the world of Libra. And now we will talk about what catches the eye of almost everyone who is even a little familiar with this sign of the zodiac: their love of beauty. This is probably one of the most well-known aspects associated with Libra, and admittedly, sometimes it can be perplexing. After all, it is true that sometimes it seems that Libra is too fixated on external attractiveness, on aesthetics in all its manifestations. Their craving for beauty can be perceived as a kind of superficiality, as if they evaluate the world solely on the cover. But let's try to look deeper. Behind this love for beautiful things, elegant shapes and harmonious combinations of colors is not just a desire for pleasant feelings. It is the need to create a space around them that reflects their inner world, their desire for balance and harmony. For Libra, beauty is not just a pleasant addition to life, it is one of the ways to achieve inner balance. However, of course, it is important to understand where the healthy craving for beauty ends and begins, let's say, overkill. When aesthetics becomes an end in itself, when the external overshadows the internal content, then the very strangeness that we talked about at the beginning appears. It is important to remember that for Libra, as for any other sign, depth is important, fullness is important. However, this is only one side of the coin. After all, Libra has one more trait, which, in my opinion, is worthy of close attention, and which often becomes the cause of misunderstanding. It is about their keen sense. But about this another time. So, we continue our journey deep into the mysterious soul of Libra. And today let's talk about perhaps the most famous quality of this sign, their keen sense of justice. Libra, like no one else, believes in honesty, in the fact that everyone should be equal before the law, before life. And this is certainly a wonderful quality. But, sometimes their desire for this very justice can be perceived by others as naivety. Yes, that's right. Why? The thing is that Libra often idealize the concept of justice. In their world everything should be correct, balanced, harmonious. But, let's be honest, life is a complicated thing and not always fair. And sometimes, striving for the ideal, Libra lose sight of reality. They can long and painfully weigh all the pros and cons, when you need to act quickly and decisively. They may try to find a compromise where there simply cannot be one. They may believe that everyone can be persuaded, everyone can be negotiated with. And here it is important to realize that justice is not always about equality. It's often about balance. It's about taking into account all circumstances, all points of view. And, of course, it is about distinguishing justice from revenge. After all, you must agree, the desire to take revenge on the offender is a different story, which has nothing to do with the true desire for honesty. Sometimes, watching Libra, it seems that they just need everything around them was right. But what lies behind this desire? Is it more than just a thirst for fairness? Perhaps this is due to another interesting feature of this sign, which we will talk about later. So, we continue our dive into the mysterious world of Libra. And now we will talk about their, let's say, increased need for approval. Yes, Libra cares what people think of them. Sometimes it's even too important. And this is their sociality, the desire to please, can be perceived by others as conformism. They say that Libra adjusts to the opinion of the majority, only if everyone was good. But let's try to understand what lies behind this desire. And there lies, in my opinion, quite understandable fear, the fear of being rejected. Libra, like no one else, is important harmony in relationships. And any manifestation of dislike they perceive very painfully. Hence the desire to please everyone, to be in good relations with everyone. This is a kind of defense mechanism. But, of course, as in everything, here is important measure. The desire for approval is normal, it is natural for any person. But when it becomes excessive, when Libra begins to sacrifice their own interests for the sake of other people's opinions, that's where the problems begin. It is important to remember that it is impossible to please everyone. And the most important thing is to stay true to yourself. Libra needs to develop its own confidence, strengthen the inner core. Realize that their value does not depend on what others think of them. This is a long way, but it is necessary to achieve the very harmony to which they are so eager. And, while we're on the subject of harmony, there is another aspect, closely related to this topic, that often puts Libra in a tricky position. An aspect that many consider their weakness, but perhaps it's just another facet of their complex nature. So, let's talk about how Libra feels about conflict. Often their peacefulness borders on what, alas, some mistake for cowardice. But is it really so? Observing Libra, I have come to the conclusion that their avoidance of confrontation is not so much fear as a deep reluctance to disturb the very harmony they value so much. It is really difficult for them to offend another person, even if that person deserves it. In their understanding, any dispute is an imbalance that needs to be corrected as soon as possible. But, of course, there are situations when conflict is simply necessary. When you need to defend your interests, defend your beliefs or just tell the truth, even if it is unpleasant. And here Libra can face serious difficulties. It can be difficult for them to transcend themselves, through their desire for universal agreement. The irony is that, avoiding conflicts, Libra sometimes create them even more. After all, silencing problems, leaving the sharp edges sooner or later lead to an explosion. It is important to learn to find the golden mean, to be able to defend their positions without resorting to aggression and maintaining respect for the interlocutor. But what drives Libra in their quest for balance? Isn't there something more behind their need for harmony than just a desire to avoid quarrels? So, let's talk about perhaps the most famous Libra trait, their craving for partnership. For Libra, relationship is not just a pleasant addition to life, it is, rather, a vital necessity. And that's where the seed of misunderstanding lies. From the outside it may seem that Libra pathologically dependent on someone, that they constantly need support and approval. But let's look deeper. Venus, the ruler of Libra, gives them the desire for harmony, and harmony, as we know, is rarely achieved alone. Libra needs someone to complement them, someone to bring balance to their lives. This is not necessarily a romantic partner, it can be a friend, a colleague, even just a like-minded person. However, as with everything, there is an important measure here. A healthy partnership is one where everyone retains their individuality, where there is room for personal space and development. Unhealthy is when one partner dissolves into another, loses himself, his interests and goals. And, unfortunately, Libra, in their desire for harmony, sometimes overreact and allow this to happen. It is important for Libra to remember that to achieve true harmony, you must first find harmony within yourself. You cannot build a strong relationship if the foundation is a need for constant approval and fear of loneliness. And, speaking of relationships, we can't help but touch on another interesting feature that sometimes confuses those around us. So, we continue our journey into the depths of the mysterious soul of Libra. And now let's talk about, perhaps, the most noticeable feature of this sign, their politeness. Ah, that famous politeness of Libra. It can be so impeccable that involuntarily creeps into suspicion. Is not it a game? Isn't it a mask hiding true feelings? Indeed, Libra, the real masters of social rituals. They are well aware of all the rules of etiquette, able to support the conversation, compliment and generally create an atmosphere of pleasant and harmonious communication. But here lies the catch. For some, their good manners may seem naive, devoid of sincerity. They say that everything is too smooth and sugary. But let's look at it from the other side. Libra really strive for harmony in everything, and in communication, including. For them, politeness is not just a formality, but a way to avoid conflicts, to create a comfortable environment for all participants in the conversation. This is their way of expressing respect for others. However, I agree, sometimes this politeness can overstep the boundaries, turning into the very mask. In an effort to please everyone and not to offend anyone, Libra can hide their true feelings and opinions, which, of course, does not contribute to sincerity in relationships. It is important to remember that behind impeccable manners hides a living person with his experiences and needs. And, like any other sign, Libra sometimes needs to remove this armor of politeness and allow themselves to be more open and real. And here, thinking about this external courtesy, involuntarily think about how objective Libra in their judgments. Isn't there some kind of detachment behind their desire for justice? So, we have already had time to talk a little about Libra, about their desire for harmony and balance. But let's look at another facet of this sign, their analytical skills and desire for objectivity. Libras have a sharp mind and know how to weigh the pros and cons before making a decision. This quality is certainly valuable, especially in situations that require an unbiased view. But herein lies the paradox. Their desire for objectivity, this very impartiality, can sometimes be perceived by others as detachment. It seems as if Libra observes what is happening from the sidelines, without getting emotionally involved. And this can create an impression of coldness or even indifference. Of course, objectivity is a great strength. It allows you to see the situation as a whole, without distortions caused by emotions. But like any metal, it has a flip side. An overemphasis on objectivity can lead to a lack of empathy, an inability to sympathize and understand the feelings of others. It is important to remember that the world is not divided only into black and white, and that in most situations there is room for emotion and empathy. Libra, with their analytical mind, sometimes it is worth reminding yourself of the importance of empathy, the need to see the world not only through the eyes of reason, but also through the eyes of the heart. After all, it is the ability to empathize that makes us truly human. And, since we are talking about the perception of Libra by others, it is impossible not to mention one more interesting feature, which often plays not the least role in the formation of this impression. So, let's talk about the elegance of Libra. They, like no one else, know how to make an impression. Venus, their heavenly patroness, generously endows them with a sense of style and the ability to present themselves. But herein lies one of the paradoxes. This external flawlessness, this verified elegance, sometimes perceived by others as a mask. The question arises, what lies behind this facade? Venus, of course, has a huge influence on the aesthetic preferences of Libra. They strive to surround themselves with beauty, and this desire is manifested in everything, from the choice of clothes to the arrangement of the house. But sometimes this love of beauty can grow into something more, become an end in itself. And then there is a risk that the form begins to prevail over the content. It is important to realize that for Libra it is very important to match the internal and external. They want their inner world, their values and beliefs, reflected in their outer appearance. But this search for harmony, a difficult process. And sometimes, striving for the ideal, they can get carried away by external attributes, forgetting about the deeper aspects of their personality. However, do not rush to conclusions. Behind this external restraint and elegance often hides a rich inner world, full of contradictions and doubts. And, perhaps, it is these internal fluctuations that make Libra so ambiguous. But we'll talk about that a little later. So, let's talk about Libra's fluctuations, about their seeming inconstancy. Have you noticed how they are tossed from side to side, as if on the very scales they symbolize? This is not caprice and not a desire to confuse others. This, the search for balance, the Holy Grail, which seeks the soul of every representative of this sign. Imagine the situation: Libra weighs all the pros and cons, striving for the most objective solution. And here, when it seems that the scale is frozen in the balance, there is a new factor, a new detail, forcing them to start all over again. This process, of course, can lead to indecision, to delayed decision-making. But it is worth remembering that behind this external instability hides a deep desire for harmony. And the task of Libra, to learn to find this harmony not only in the outside world, but also within themselves. Find inner stability, which will allow them not to waver under the slightest breeze. But how exactly they manage to smooth out sharp edges in communication, we will talk a little later. So, we have already touched on many facets of this sign, but let's talk about Libra's communication skills. Here lies another secret of their seeming strangeness. Libras are great listeners. They really know how to get into the essence of what is said, showing sincere empathy for the interlocutor. This quality is undoubtedly valuable, but sometimes it can be perceived as yielding, as lack of one's own opinion. Let's break it down. Active listening is a powerful tool for building harmonious relationships. Libras use it skillfully, creating the feeling that they are heard and understood. But where is the line between empathy and spinelessness? When does being compliant start to hurt Libra in the first place? The problem is that the desire to avoid conflict can make Libra agree with other people's opinions, even if they contradict their own. Afraid to break the harmony, they suppress their true feelings and thoughts. But, as we understand, this cannot last for long. It is important to remember that the ability to express your opinion, to defend your position is not a manifestation of aggression, but a necessary condition for healthy relationships and personal growth. Libra should learn to find a balance between diplomacy and directness, between the desire to please and the need to be themselves. And, thinking about harmony in relationships, we cannot but touch upon another area where Libra shows its strangeness, their ideas about love and the ideal partner. So, let's talk about love, the very one, in the understanding of Libra. Venus, as the ruler of this sign, endows them with lofty ideas about romance. Libra strive for ideal relationships, to the very picture from the movie, where everything is beautiful, harmonious and without a single hitch. And here lies the catch. Their desire for perfection in love is sometimes perceived by others as unrealistic expectations, as a kind of detachment from the earth. Libra draw in their imagination the image of an ideal partner, relationship, where there is no room for quarrels, offenses and other imperfections of real life. But, as we know, life is not a movie, and relationships are about hard work, compromise and acceptance of each other's imperfections. When do these very ideals begin to interfere with building real relationships? When Libra is so fixated on the right picture that they don't see the person who is next to them, with all his advantages and disadvantages. It is important to remember that true love is not about perfection, but about acceptance, about the ability to see beauty in imperfection, about support and understanding. Libra sometimes need to come down from heaven to earth and realize that there are no perfect people, and real feelings are born not from compliance with some invented criteria, but from sincerity, warmth and understanding. Acceptance of partners' shortcomings is the key to harmonious and long-term relationships for Libra. But what happens in the soul of Libra themselves, when faced with the contradictions of the real world, when the ideal picture collapses? How do they cope with the inner conflict between the desire for perfection and the inevitability of imperfection? So, let's look deeper into the inner world of Libra, into this complex system of mirrors and balances. Sometimes, watching them, there is a feeling that in front of you is not a whole person, but rather a collection of different, sometimes contradicting each other, This does not mean that Libra is inconsistent, but rather that they are multifaceted. They can simultaneously strive for justice and avoid conflict, dream of perfect love and fear of losing their freedom. And this internal struggle is often perceived by others as a kind of strangeness, illogical behavior. But, let me note, are not we ourselves in these very contradictions? It's just that Libra has them as if brought to the surface, visible to the naked eye. It is important to realize that behind every decision, behind every act of Libra is a whole system of weighing and evaluation. They try to take into account all the factors, all the possible consequences. And this requires time, reflection, and sometimes agonizing hesitation. What should Libra do to reconcile these internal contradictions? First of all, self-knowledge. Understand what values are really important to you, what fears you are driven by. Accept yourself with all your strengths and weaknesses. And then, perhaps, the scales inside you will finally come into balance. Understanding yourself is the key to harmony, not only for Libra, but for any person. But what if the desire for an ideal, for harmonious relationships, turns into dependence on other people's opinions? It is worth thinking about it separately. So, we have come to a kind of finale of our study of the mysterious nature of Libra. I hope that now you look at them not as a set of contradictions, but as a complex, multifaceted crystal. And if it seemed to you that their strangeness is a flaw, then perhaps it is just a manifestation of their depth, their constant striving for balance in a world where balance is very rare. Let's be more mindful of the Libra in our lives. Their politeness and diplomacy often hides a subtle mind and a big heart that seeks justice and harmony. Appreciate their ability to see different points of view, their ability to find compromises, their contribution to creating beauty and harmony around us. Libra, with their astrologically determined desire for balance and fairness, play an important role in society, reminding us to consider the interests of others. And perhaps it is their seeming indecisiveness that is actually their wisdom in avoiding hasty and rash decisions. In conclusion, I would like to express confidence that, armed with an understanding of the astrological aspects, we will be able to take a fresh look at this zodiac sign and appreciate it. But, behind all these searches for balance and harmony, behind the pursuit of justice and beauty, there is another interesting question: how do Libra cope with the inevitable storms and shocks of life? How does their inner strength manifest itself when the world around them loses its balance?